Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., we turn our Facebook page over to a new author to talk about their books and their work. This morning, we are pleased to have with us Elizabeth Conte. Elizabeth is a women's fiction writer, creating beauty for the mind. She's a writer of poetry, short stories, and novels with her debut book, Finding Jane, releasing spring 22, which I believe is about now.
It's now.
Now, her short stories are featured in anthologies, The Truth That Can't Be Told, Let's Begin Again, and Free Spirit. Poetry and other writings have been published in the Pangolin Review, Plato's Cave, Lost Coast Review, Lake Forest Women's Writers Roundtable, Sad Girls Club Lit, PennWriters, writersferry.com, Industry News for Women Fiction Writers Association, and ocwriters.com. Well, that covers a lot.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a while.
So I know you write a lot of short stories and poetry and everything. What was your inspiration for the writing a book and actually publishing long form?
Well, actually, I started writing a book first and then moved into shorts because I started taking courses like in Europe, some writing courses and tutelage under some really fine writers. And that got me into writing short stories. The poetry came, I just started writing poetry. I don't know, it just happened. And I started submitting thinking, well, let's see what happens with it. And then I got published with some of my poetry first. So maybe I did it backwards. I don't know, but yeah, I started writing the novel. It's been about 9 years now since I started writing novels, and I've written 3 so far. So this is my first one to get out. The other ones will get out. We just have to edit them. You know what it's like. Uh-oh.
We just have to find them and get them to that place, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this, my mother got dementia. And so I had to take off a good 3 years to take care of her until she passed away in 2020. So it was kind of like a big chunk of writing experience and years of, she passed away. I let 2020 end. It was COVID and, just trying to get back into that mental state. And then come 2021, I said, you know what, I need to do this. I love writing. I got to get back into it. And you have to dedicate 100% when you write. So that's what I did. I hired an editor and I said, I'm going to get out my book. And I started submitting my stories and my poetry. And I actually got some good publications and it just kind of started flowing. And I felt like the momentum, and I finished editing my book, 2021, and got it out this year. So writing is a long process. People think I am always admiring people who can do a book in a month or 3 months. I can't. Yeah. That's not for me.
I always love talking to people who have taken a while, particularly debut authors who've taken a while to write their first book. And 9 years is a long time. So I imagine that book went through numerous iterations based on changing writing styles and views or...
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Now, it didn't take me 9 years to write that book. I wrote that book in about a year. And then my other 2 books I wrote a year succinctly, each year I put out a book or was working on a book.
But now you're editing it.
Yeah, so it took me another year to edit because I hadn't put my hands on it. And I knew that I wanted, most people go, oh, my first book is sitting in a drawer. My book was, I really love this story and I wanted to get it out in the world. But you're right, my writing style had totally changed in that I got better. And I cringe to think about who read it, 9 years ago. Got a lot of interest from agents and publishing houses. So I knew the story was viable. It was something, that people probably would want to read. It just, my writing style changed.
Okay. Well, tell us about the story that fascinated you and inspired you to write it.
Can I back up of sure. Why I write a little? I love romantic stories and I am a 19th century writer person. I love the authors from the 19th century. And, my Jane Austen is one of my favorite, the Brontes, Wharton, all these beautiful stories. And so I kind of have that history of reading old world literature. but nobody wants to read old world literature these days. I try to get book clubs to read old world literature. And they're like, yeah, let's read something newer, because it's hard to get through at times. We have a different attention span, and our, vocabulary is different. So as I was reading, I kept on going, gosh, I'm not finding what I love about 19th century literature. It's just not there. Literature has changed. 20th century literature changed a lot. But I really miss that kind of old world styles. And I'm really a romantic person, and I love romanticism, which doesn't necessarily equate to romantic, but I love the era of romanticism in writing. And I wasn't getting that in any of the writers that I found. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to write something that is equivalent to that, but just to kind of bring it to the 21st century woman. So my tag is, I'm trying to take 19th century literature and bring it to the 21st century woman. And that takes us to Finding Jane. So Finding Jane is, the story style is very old world, but very fresh.
So when you say old world,
a lot
describe
of
what that means to people who may or may not know.
Sure.
From your perspective.
The story is, I have a lot of background, like, back in the 19th century, we didn't have television. So when you read a book, they described a lot. And it's not over descriptive, but it's very visual, I would say. A lot of books don't have that today because we're very quick pace. We watch television really quickly, want to flash in front of our eyes. And mine is kind of a book that's kind of like, you delve into it and you're there and you can see it and experience, and I explain the gardens, the clothing, the detail on the clothing, what she's seeing in a room, the furniture. So you're actually walking through this house with her. And so, it's a style for some. It's not going to I really loved about 18th century or 19th century literature is the characters. Now you have a lot of characters coming in and out of scenes. A lot of books today, you have like 5 main characters, friend here and there. I have a lot of characters in my book because I think that's the world, and they're not just insignificant when you meet somebody. They have importance to how you develop, how you see the world, and how you view other people. And I wanted to bring a lot of characters in because the 2 people who fall in love, which is Jane and Henry, they fall in love with each other not because they're just sexually attracted to each other, but because they see how good they are by the people that they're surrounded with. And that's what I love about romantic stories. It's not just this sexual attraction, but it's this spiritual, mental, physical kind of thing all coming together, and why they love each other. I miss that about romantic stories. I always laugh because my daughter is 19 or going to be 19, and I want her to see the world in a more romantic way. When you watch movies today or television shows, I'll be honest, people have sex and then they fall in love, and that's the story. In the end, they fall in love, and I'm like, I want her to have that romantic feeling, that long burn of falling in love with somebody before you become this sexually attracted, they become this sexually attracted person. So that's what I love about this stories of the 19th century, is this, you're seeing these people, your main characters, through the eyes of other people and how they interact and why they interact with people. And so it's kind of a deeper story in the way you read. So that's kind of the basic theory behind my writing and why I presented this book, because I wanted to reintroduce literary romance or romanticism back into the literary world. I don't see it out there in other books. And so I want to kind of reintroduce that to people, but in a way that is new and fresh. Like every Pride and Prejudice, how many times have we seen it? It's been redone. Or all Jane Austen books, they're constantly remaking these movies, and everybody loves them. They do really well. I mean, Jane Austen is still up in the top 10 of authors. Why is that? Because she offers something that people love no matter what era we're in. So I wanted to bring those elements in, but I wanted to have new stories, not just remaking Mr. Darcy or Emma or, Elizabeth and her sisters. Or
not a vampire.
Or a vampire. So I wanted to give you what people were really seeking out of those stories and bring them into new stories. So that's where Finding Jane comes in.
I really love that, because there's so many stories that you read that, based on what at the end of the book, when they end up together, you're like, oh, this is going to last a week. If they're still together after a month, I'll be shocked, based on what we know.
And I wanted characters like, we have, several characters today that we just always linger with and we love. I mean, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, everybody knows who Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy is. Doesn't matter what age you are, what era you grew up in, you knew. Jane and Henry are those two characters. They're going to be classic love story, the characters that you'll remember forever.
Well, I love that, but I think the romanticism is coming back, with the fascination with Bridgerton and the success of Bridgerton and some of the other romances, Regency type romances that are coming.
People love that. They love that old world feel, the conflict, and there is, and you'll notice a pattern of the way people are. It's just Downton Abbey alone, the dresses alone will just kill me. I had to watch it just for that.
I just want to watch people get dressed in the morning once, just to see how long that took.
Yeah. And then the characters, you're just not talking about the main family, but you're talking about the servants down below. There's just so many things about stories like that. They're so rich and deep, and you can get different things from them, the layered stories in them. And that's what I want to bring back in writing. And romanticism is my favorite, and I want to bring it back. And I think there's an audience out there who wants that as well.
It sounds fascinating. So, I mean, do you carry this over into your other writing as well? Your poetry and your short stories, or is this where you want to live?
That's a really good question, because I never really thought about it. My poetry, it's probably very romantic, but maybe a little sad in a lot of ways.
That happens.
Yeah, and my short stories, it's funny, they're kind of depressing. Sometimes they're just, but they have the same elements of diving into these people's lives and description and connection with the elements. I don't know how to explain it, but I think my writing's very consistent. But my books are probably more romantic than my short stories. Because short stories are a reflection of the world, maybe, my characters in real life situations. And so that's not always so pretty. I wrote a story in The Truth That Can't Be Told about my mother, who she was moving into dementia, and she was always really sad and angry. My mother was such a kind woman, but it's the dementia. They get these mood swings. And one day I looked at her and I said, "Mom, why are you so mad? Why are you so angry?" And she goes, "You just won't understand, this drama." And I went home and I thought about it for a while, and I wrote a story and that's what the story is. It's The Woman in the Mirror. And I stepped in her shoes. And so I read it to her and she cried. She said, you get it. And it's not a happy story. It's about being old and dying.
You're making me cry.
It's a reality. So my husband read it and he goes, "That is so depressing." And I go, but it's real. And I wanted to capture that for people, because this is how older people feel, and we're ignoring them and we're not understanding where they're at. I mean, they're still seeing the world and they're seeing it behind them, and it's hard. So she's looking at a mirror. She used to say to me all the time, "Who's that old woman in the mirror?" To her dying day, she just couldn't, her mind and what she saw was not
reconciled the two.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me, though, that there is consistency in the writing, that it's both your books and your poetry in the emotional aspect of it. Mm-hmm. I think the hardest thing for writers to do is to help people feel when they're reading what they write. So whether it's happiness or sadness or whatever the emotion is to get that emotion on the page is a gift. Yeah. So what is your favorite piece of writing that you've ever done?
That I've ever done?
Yeah. Tell us about that. And
you know what? The story about my mother really moved me, because it was important that I stepped into her feelings, and I did it. And I was really proud of that. And I don't know how I did that, but I did it. And I really love that I could present that to the world. And then I have some poems that are really important to me. My child would not like this, but it's about my son going through some hard times, depression. And those, every time I read them, they just like tug at my heart.
Published?
No, they're just there with me.
They're personal.
Yeah, there's stepping into other people. Like I wrote a poem about my friend's mother who was dying. She had a great attitude for it. Can I tell you this quick story? She was dying, and my friend called me, and I called her and I go, "Hey Mom," because I used to call her Mom. I go, "How are you doing?" She goes, "I'm dying, for God's sake. How do you think I'm feeling?" She and she died the next day. I mean, it was that close. But I wrote a poem about her, and it was just, I stepped into her life. I stepped into who she was. And I think with my poetry, that's probably closest to me, because it's this very emotional, spiritual thing that I do when I write poetry. It's probably more of who I am, and that's scarier to put out in the world.
Personal and so close. So when you decided to publish Finding Jane, tell us about how that felt now that it's out. And
well, again, like they always say, don't publish your first book.
what do they know?
I get a lot of no-nos in this book. Like the opening scene is somebody waking up. It's Jane, and they say never open a book where somebody is waking up. I'm like, I'm breaking all the rules with this book. So I'm just going for it. Go for the gusto. So this book, to put it out, when I got my editor, hello, Michelle Morrow, I love her. She was really an inspiration for me, because you're so critical of yourself. And I worked so hard to make this quote perfect. And I wanted to appeal to the marketplace. And she was so good. She said to me, she goes, Elizabeth, she goes, write the story you want to put out there. It's your voice. Do it. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed, because I do a lot of things that are breaking the rules. And I always say, should I do this? Should I do that? And she goes, it's you, do it. And I did it. And of course I had to tone down a few things here and there, but that was the journey for this book. It's like, when I wrote the other two, you started querying and agents telling you what they want, or publishing houses. So you change a lot of things that you're doing. And so when I wrote this, again, to get it out in the world, I didn't do that. I said, you know what, I'm putting out this book the way I want to put it out, what I want to say, how I want to lay it out, and I'm going to do it. So I think that's the biggest success for me, is like, this is the book I wanted to put out. No publishing house told me what to do. Nobody's telling me how to write or to change this or to change that. I did what I thought I wanted in a book, and I put it out in the world. And I'm hoping people like it. I'm getting great reviews, and they're getting what I wanted them to get out of the book. So I'm really proud of that.
Is that the book cover behind you?
It is. It's a little backwards, because, I don't know how to change things.
Oh, if we can see it the right way.
Yeah.
That was too quick, Elizabeth. Hold that up a little bit longer so we can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That was my design.
So where can people find the book? And now that everybody's interested and you piqued everybody's curiosity.
Yeah. So I didn't really tell people what the book about. It's Pride and Prejudice meets The Time Traveler's Wife. So it's a historical with time slip elements. And it's a journey, and it's fun, and it's deep, and it's romantic. And I think people will just love it. The number one comment I'm getting from feedback is, I feel like I was there with the characters. I experienced what they were experiencing. That's like the biggest compliment to me, because that's what I wanted. And the second part is, they can't put it down.
All right. Well, there we go.
They can find it on Amazon. I have it in paperback, hardback, and ebook comes out tomorrow. Ooh. So I'll have EPUB out, and you can find it at Barnes & Noble online. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at thrift books. I mean, I looked all over. It's out there if you want to find it.
Well, that's exciting. So what's next for you?
My next book that's sitting on the computer.
Okay.
That's been my editor's like, okay, I'm ready, send it over, let's go, let's work on this. So that will be the next book.
Is it a standalone, or is it related to
I am a standalone author, so I only write single stories. I will never do a series, because
I just want you to know that we have now recorded this. So
no, I will
change your mind.
Nope, I will not change my mind, because I'm a true believer in your own imagination. And when you finish a book with characters, it's up to you to decide how the rest of their lives go.
All right, so now everybody, I think we have a great idea of what we're in for. I hope everybody who has a chance to read the book or get their hands on it will. If you get your hands on it and somebody loaned it to you or whatever, please leave a review.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah, authors love reviews almost as much as you buying their books. So if you want to support Elizabeth, either one would be great. And we wish you a lot of luck in the future. and with Finding Jane. It's a beautiful cover and it sounds like a great story. I'm anxious to read it myself. So
Well, I hope you like it. Let me know.
well, and you know what, we're going to put your contact information in there.
Mhm.
So, or at least your website, so people know how to follow what you're doing.
Okay, perfect. I love that.
All right. Well, thank you. We're going to wrap up. This
All
looks
right.
like a good point. I want to thank everybody who's been with us this morning. I hope you enjoyed our time with Elizabeth. If you enjoyed this, please share it on our YouTube channel, SCWA Writers Online, or you can share it on Facebook as well. And if you're interested in other interviews like this, you can also find them on SCWA Writers Online on YouTube. So until next week, please stay safe and we will see you soon. And thank you again, Elizabeth. Take care.
Thanks. Thanks so much.